All right, welcome back to the F3 Northeast Wake podcast. I'm your host, Blake Anderson, Money Pit. Back with me again, Brandon Carter. Turnover.
Hey guys, how are you doing? I'm so glad to
Hey,
be back on.
man,
End
we
of the
miss
year.
you.
Yeah, absolutely. And the year strong here.
Yeah, well, I had to call you back because you started the year with me.
Sounds good.
And you were my frequent guest. I love having this conversation with me. I was like, how am I going to end the year? Well, let's see if Turnover will close the book with me. And and I feel like this is just a great way just to have a pretty general leadership discussion. And we can tie in some things from this chapter as well. But the chapter is lizard building. And really, a lizard organization is one that's growing, that's flourishing, that's filled with leaders, that continues to adapt and expand versus a bullfrog that fights for the status quo or a leech that's like consuming itself. And I think we all desire to be a part of what Dredd would call lizard organization, something where there's healthy growth in mind. And, it's really to have a lizard organization, it's the culmination of everything we've talked about this year. So, love to just get, quick hot take on the four quadrants of get right, live right, lead right, and leave right, and how they all build towards the potential of creating a lizard organization.
Yeah, second time through this chapter
Mm-hmm.
for me or this section and when you read it, like when you go through because last year I started midway through and then this year I went all the way through and foundations and then setting your foundations and really asking yourself, am I clear on where my foundations are? Getting right, um, live right, then lead right. And with the lead right, it's always, the first word that comes to mind is legacy. And then
Mm-hmm.
how do we leave a legacy as an implant within our organizations, within the community we're in, within our family, to where we're equipping, right, as one of
Yes.
our chapters, our team to be able to make decisions. And it's always funny when Dredd puts words that are like the bullfrog and the leech and the lizard, and like trying to figure out what he means by that. But the lizard is agile.
Mm-hmm.
It's able to move quickly, which means that they can't sit back and wait for circumstances to happen. They have to be able to move quickly and adapt. They're agile, right? They're much more
Mm-hmm.
agile than the other two analogies that he's given, and they live where they can in a community, but they're not dependent on anything. They can be
Yeah,
independent.
that's a
So
good point.
I think and he mentioned something in there about the lizard getting into a kingdom or a house or something like that. I can't remember exactly what he mentioned, but it was like a bullfrog would never do that. A bullfrog's
No.
not going to leave its environment and go and try to do something, but a lizard would. A lizard's going to explore. So it's important to know that, like what he's meaning by that is that we have to be agile. We have to be able to, not be stuck in our status quo, be able to engage ourselves be able to move quickly in situations. And I think that that's something that, first thing is, are we ready to be that way? But how do we
Yeah.
help others to be adaptable to that kind of environment?
Yeah. Maxwell talks about the law of the lid, right? So, like
Hmm.
you say, first, are you ready? Because the thing is, if you're the leader, you're going to be the lid. The organization can only grow to the extent that you will let it, right? And then if you say, yeah, I'm ready, and you're serious about that, well, then what are you doing in order to make that possible? Which is really quadrant four, is all about team building, creating leaders that can lead, doing the part as a leader. I had a mentor, I don't know, maybe a decade ago, and he had this four-step framework that from Isaiah 54:17 that said, build up, prepare the road, and remove the obstacles. And he taught this profound teaching of those are the four steps of being a leader of an organization. It's like, first, you need to build up the organization. And I took the build ups to mean two things. First, you're going to build the process, and then you're going to build the people, right? And
Hmm.
then you want to prepare the road. The leader's job is to have the plan and prepare things, to get things, people equipped to go. And then finally, the leader's job was to remove the obstacles, what the Bible verse said. Like, as the team is moving forward, then you as a leader, like Dredd would say, 43 feet ahead, right?
Hmm.
Your job is to stay ahead and to pull those rocks, pull those branches, pull the things off the path that keep things from moving forward. And that's the mind of the lizard leader is they're not the playmaker, right? They're the coordinator. And if you got to be the quarterback getting all the highlight reels, then you probably aren't in a lizard organization, right? Versus saying, I'm committed to growth. And I know this happens when I empower other people to shine.
Yeah, and I thought it was interesting how he spent a lot of time talking about rules and how rules, like when someone's following the rules and there's a lot of rules, and how that really prohibits
Mm-hmm.
people to step up and lead and step, and I think it was a reminder as I was reading it to think about the rules that I have created in my
Mm-hmm.
organization, and are they stifling creativity? Are they allowing, like disallowing autonomy to happen? Am I, prohibiting growth of people in those things?
Mm-hmm.
If we say, well, I want consistency, I want rules, I want everything done the same,
Yeah.
you know, um, and we know sometimes that there's other ways to do things that are probably better than what we do. And by allowing a little bit of freedom with our team, we can really open the door and learn from that. So I think it was important that it was discussed in this chapter because it's a reminder that as we're trying to leave a team empowered to do something, that we really need to do that, empower them and say, no, I spent all of this time creating rules and processes and SOPs and how to do things. And I'm now going to train everybody on it. Now that they're trained on it, I can leave now. It's more about teaching them the culture,
Yeah.
the values, the mission, and saying the goal is here. So how you get there might be different than how I'm not going to tell you step by step to do it, but I think that's a real important takeaway when we're talking about this is to say, in leaving right, it doesn't mean that everybody's been trained on every rule and there needs to be rules for every situation. It means that they understand the mission
Yeah.
and they're aligned with the culture.
Yeah, it's like he was talking about the importance of having creating guardrails, maintaining the guardrails, but guardrails don't direct every step. They just keep you from falling off in the ditches.
Yeah.
And I'm just speaking frankly, I'm convicted by what you're saying because you employ people who they're going to have someone's going to screw up sometime, and we need to learn from screw ups, but we can often go too far by creating rules. Well, I can't let that happen again. So
Yeah.
create a rule and another checklist and another checklist, and now no one can think for themselves because you got to do it this way because God forbid you make the mistake, right? And so, yeah, maybe no one makes a mistake ever again, but have you considered what you forfeited in this
Yeah.
attempt to stranglehold things from people from making mistakes? You might have held back the leaders from running in front and creating expansion in the business.
I think a lot of it comes down to, and kind of similar to the discussion we were having before we started, this was, are we finding the talent that works for us and getting them aligned with the vision and really exciting them about the mission, and then stepping back and letting them take the lead? Or are we looking to train them what we know, every step we know, all of our knowledge, which is going to take a tremendous amount of time, um, or do we get them on the right path and we let them have some ability to make those decisions? I think it's always a challenge as we lead too, to let go. That's one of the biggest, because that means that we lose control. And when we lose control, failure can happen, right?
Yes.
We don't want a failure to happen.
No. And I think that's why we have to embrace we let go, but we realize our job isn't to control each step. Our job is just to keep the guardrails in front.
Mhm.
Keep the guardrails in front and allow the team keep finding their way. Let me ask you a selfish question here, and I'll just let Pax in on this conversation. Maybe it benefits someone. So lizards are organizations that are constantly growing and evolving and changing. There's dynamics, right? It has dynamism. So let's say you got an organization that, and so one of the organizations I'm involved with has grown, and it's grown a lot with the expertise of the team that it created. Okay. And it can no longer effectively serve its original customer. But in its growth, it now has a new customer that it serves very well and better than it probably did its first customer. And so there's a little bit of struggle back and forth from a desire to want to continue to serve the original customer, which we defined as mission, against the evolution that's been happening just by sheer nature of the people that came to our team, the expertise that they bring. And I will say this also, the new evolution has brought growth, and there's quite a bit more potential there, but it takes a little, there's a little pull against why the organization started and the original customer. How do you see that? Because
Well,
lizards are going to grow, there's going to be evolution, but at the same time, we know there should be someone fighting for the mission.
um, how different is the mission though? Just because the customer you serve has a different product or a different need doesn't mean that the mission is different.
Yeah, true. No, mission's not necessarily yeah, that's a good point. It's a good point.
I think what we get to is that we have to agree that there's gonna be adjustments and evolution that happen. And one
Mm-hmm.
of those things is if we look at like the Industrial Revolution or early 1900s, um, change happened much slower. Like the 1930s or the 1940s were not as drastic of decades, let's say, of change as what you would compare like 2000, 2010, 2010 to 2020, and so on. Like even a conversation as little as AI is revolutionizing technology in the last 2 years.
Yeah,
Um,
right. It's amazing how
internet,
quick.
the internet is really, let's just say, most actively 25 years old at the most, right? Where it's, or maybe a little bit more, but you just start to, the time is compressing so much quicker. So you're having to adjust faster. So if your mission is still the same, we serve a client
Mm.
in this space and we do this, the nuances of it are just adjustments to the environment. And I think that that's something that you would probably say is that we gained new talent. We still are serving clients and serving customers. You haven't gone into a different vertical.
Mm-mm.
You haven't, you might have a just
There's a
slightly
niche,
avatar.
niche down.
Yeah, and I think that's actually being more lizard-like than bullfrog. The bullfrog would say, I got this new talent and I'm not going to adjust because I've got this new talent, which opens up more opportunity to serve. I'm not going to pivot. I'm just going to stay. Nope, nope. You need to learn our way because this is what we committed to doing.
Yeah, I mean, you look back at some of the biggest successes of the 20th century. We'll just name a couple, but one would be Boeing. Another would
Hmm.
be JW Marriott. So most people don't know JW Marriott Hotel started as a root beer stand. Marriott was a root beer stand. He didn't
Hmm.
set out to create hotels. He just started serving a customer and he followed their needs. And next thing you know, the product, changed. And I think Boeing, when they were like a timber manufacturer or something before he started building planes, right? So, um, yeah, I mean, I think there's going to be a tension. I think tension is really healthy in organizations. As we have different people fighting for different things. Is ultimately we're not fighting so hard for ourselves being right. Instead, we're allowing the tension to create new ideas. And I think lizards can grow really well. And in my experience, find some of their most creative strategies through tense moments where new is struggling against the old.
Well, we have to, and if your mission, think of it this way, if you go back and you say, when I created this mission for this team and the vision of the build of the company and all these things, you didn't know what you know now.
That's right.
So at the time, you
That's a
created
great point.
the best thing that you could.
Mm-hmm.
And if you were to say, let me rewind the tape back to 5 years ago when I did this and we wrote this thing out, we had a good plan. That was a great plan for that time, but you wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
do the same plan now.
Mm-hmm.
Then it's just about adjusting. If that same plan is still a right plan, then don't deviate from it. But if you're like, well, it's gonna dissolve out, like example, JW Marriott, or the Boeing, for example, they saw a need. They still had the mindset around we're a mission of customer service. We're going to create a great product.
And a modern example is Amazon with AWS,
Oh yeah, right.
right? So AWS wouldn't exist without I think Vice Andy Jaffe was the vice president maybe of Amazon at the time. And
Hmm.
so, you know, you could say what's more senior, the mission or the people that serve the mission? And that we can't, I mean, people aren't robots, they bring so much to the table. And I think a lizard organization knows how to work with and makes room for those game changer people to bring new things that, yeah, might change the organization, but are going to find things that you couldn't have found without them.
Well, let's use Amazon as an example. And
Mm-hmm.
and I'm assuming I'm guessing, I don't remember, it was like early 2000, like late 1990s when it started as a book, a book store out of a garage, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
online book retailer, right? Um, Now I don't even know what percentage of books they actually sell, but it's nothing compared to what their overall, gross revenue
Mm-hmm.
is. And I would say that if they were a bullfrog organization, they would still be selling books and that's all they would sell.
Oh,
But because
right. They would have, you're right.
because they said no, there's a
Well,
greater
but,
need.
and here's the thing, think about AWS, right? Like to me, long term, Amazon, the retailer, has
Yeah,
changed the world greater than AWS will. I think anybody can show up and provide storage space, services for whatever,
yeah.
right? That didn't necessarily change the world. You're right. They just probably have done it better than a lot of people, but they make all their money in AWS,
Hmm.
right? And if you didn't have a culture that allowed people to grow it, to bring different things to the table, who knows where the growth really stops, and who knows what the profitability of AWS has allowed Amazon as a retailer to do. Could Amazon have everything they have going on right now without AWS's profitability? Yeah, I don't know. But anyways, fascinating stuff. So wrap this up by just, you've been a leader of different organizations over time, grown things, walked away from things, started new things. As we kind of wrap this whole book together and you kind of pull on not just your experience, but the experts and the mentors that you've, you know, spent so much time with, like what's the takeaway from all of it and thinking about being a dynamic leader that does meaningful things in the world?
Always growing is
Mm-hmm.
one.
Yeah.
If you just think of the bullfrog is stationary, not going to grow. So I think it's about always growing and encouraging your team to grow. So what are we doing to develop ourselves? What are we doing for goal planning? What are we doing for challenging ourselves to be developed more mentorships, being mentored, mentoring others? What is your accountability plan? I think that's the key is that you create a culture around that and then you let that culture grow because if you're not like as an environment, if there's not a growth environment, there's no sun, there's no, water, there's no like you're going to have a stagnant,
Mm-hmm.
dormant uh area. So what can I do to create an environment that has, light, that brings light in, that brings fresh air, that brings in water. That's a living organism kind of environment's going to grow in that. I think it's the same thing within your organization. What am I doing to stimulate the growth things that are needed for that organization? Meaning challenges, continuous learning. Then that's one of the things like inside of an organization, what are you doing to read? Or what are you reading right now? What are you currently engaging your mind in? What are you doing for physical activity? What are you doing for relationships and spirituality? I think that's the big takeaway is to make sure that those foundations are in place. Again, going back to the Q source is it starts with foundations. If
Mm-hmm.
any of that is missing, you're really gonna, as soon as you step away, you're gonna see it start to decline. And so I think it's about anchoring back to those foundations and making
Yeah.
sure
I
that they're
I'm with
important.
you. I love it. You look at some of the best professional athletes in anything, and they do the most impressive things in their sport. But if you watched how they work out, they work the
It's
basics. It's just fundamentals. They just do the fundamentals with such excellence. It looks like something totally different.
Yep. It's so true. I mean, the talent in an athlete situation, everything's the same. That the talent becomes a very small piece of it.
Right.
The discipline and execution to consistency is the number one key. you know?
Yeah, and after like me too, second time through Q source, I really appreciate the first principles of holistic approach to leadership that Dredd took with the book, saying, because so many leadership books go straight into tactics and maybe even strategy, but haven't taken the time to make sure that the person of the leader is in a good stable place to even use those tactics or build that strategy. And so doing the get right, the live right, and spending half the year on those things, creates a deep, strong foundation that then you start doing the visible things. It's the things unseen that empower the things that you can see. And I think a lot of books go right past that. And we wonder why leaders don't have great personal results. Well, most of the time it's the thing you can't see that's really plaguing them.
Here's a nugget I'm going to drop, and don't miss this because this is critical. And I'm going to ask you, Money Pit, are you going to go
Mm.
through Q Source again next year? Are you going to go through the Q Source next year again?
Well, I mean, I think we should never stop. Never. I mean, whether we read the book or you do it in another way, I think the framework is true.
Yeah. And I didn't mean that to be a challenging question. I figured you would have answered very quickly, just knowing you that absolutely I'm going to continue to go through it. And I think the reason is, well, you've already read it once and you've read it twice. The reality is that there's value in that being a repeated thing again and again because you're going to continuously get input. You're going to continuously look at it from a different angle. It's going to hit at a different time of life
Yeah.
because it's a book based on principles.
Yes.
And when you focus on principles, it's just like if someone was to say, "Well, I've read the book How to Win Friends and Influence People. I don't need to read it again." And I would say,
Hmm.
"I bet you do." Or the seven habits of highly
Yeah.
effective people
Right. Come on.
because you can't, I don't believe that you've gained the knowledge that you need to by just having it, well, I've read Q source, I don't need to read it again. I think someone's really missing that as an opportunity to continue to plug in, especially in a group atmosphere, be challenged by other people's perspective. It's the same thing with reading the Bible. I've read the
Hmm.
Bible all the way through. Does that mean
Hmm.
I don't need to study it anymore? Absolutely not. It
Hmm.
means that you need to study it more
Hmm.
because there's constant learning to happen. So I think that that's the takeaway here is that even though we've been through it twice, both of us,
Hmm.
um, I'm still encouraged to start over at Foundations next at the beginning of the year to see if I have a different perspective that I'm gaining at a different part of my life, right? I'm older, I've gained more experience. I might read it differently than I did 2 years
And,
ago.
and just because something's not out of place doesn't mean you don't keep working on it,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
It's amazing how we can hear something or read something and it hits us differently just because of where our mind is currently. And it certainly happens with Bible verses. And you could say, well, I mean, how many times have we read that Bible verse or heard that Bible verse or heard a sermon about a topic? It's important for us to be able to hear it from a different perspective at a different time in our life, and our vision is different at that stage, and application then becomes really really relevant because it was meant for us at that time. That was intentional, and I think that that's the same thing with a book like this is that you have the ability to relate it to your current situation. You and I are having a discussion about lizard building, and what the comment that we had before this was about a current situation with your current team that
Hmm.
may not have been the same situation a year ago or even
Hmm.
2 years ago. So the chapter would have meant something different for you in that time. And I think that's the biggest thing here is to continue to challenge the packs on ourselves to go deep in the subject and say, I haven't stopped growing. I've never stopped growing. So I need to continue to learn.
Hmm. Love it. Well, Pax, I appreciate you joining me this year as we're journeying through this book. I think I told Jay Z last week or the week before. I don't know if I knew what I was getting into when I volunteered to record all of these episodes, but I'm gonna tell you what, it's been really rich to get to know everybody the way we have. It's deepened our friendship, though you moved away, just continue to hear your voice and receive from your wisdom, throughout the year. And the same with everybody who's commented. So, Turnover, thanks for doing this journey with me. Pax, thanks for sharing this journey over the years. We've all kind of brought our wisdom to bear and weighed in to encourage each other, and we'll see what the future holds. But I expect great things from our region of the triangle and our region of the world as we continue to improve ourselves as leaders and take that leadership to our communities.
Thank you so much, Money Pit. Bye,
Yeah.
Pax.
Thanks,
Merry Christmas.
Turnover. All right. We'll see you, Pax.
Take care.